A new era of Ys has begun. Ys 10 Nordics is the first Ys game since Ys Origin not to use the party system for combat, and the question on everyone's mind is, does the new cross-action system stay true to the Ys formula of fast-paced smooth action combat? I would say yes, and it's one of several reasons why I thoroughly enjoyed my time with Ys 10. Other reasons include a well-fleshed-out group of characters, another stellar soundtrack, and the new sailing mechanic. Ys 10 Nordics is part of the action RPG Ys series developed by Nihon Falcom and localized and published in the West by NIS America. The Ys series does have recurring characters and a timeline, but the adventures themselves are standalone, so for those interested in Ys 10 who haven't played other games in the series, that is perfectly fine. You may miss some references, but the level of continuity between games is not anything close to Falcom's other mainline series trails. Ys 10 Nordics released in Japan in September of 2023 for PS4, PS5, and Switch. Ys 10 was the first game developed by Falcom natively for the Switch after years of developing for Sony consoles. A port for PC was developed and released in Asia in March of 2024, however that version was a porting disaster and nowhere near the quality that PH3 Games would bring to the Western PC port. Speaking of that, Ys 10 Nordics released in the West on October 25th, 2024 for PS4, PS5, Switch, and PC, a release gap of a little over a year. For those who want to give the game a try first, there is a demo out for the game that takes you a meaty 6 to 8 hours to complete. Ys 10 Nordics stars Adol Kristen, our red-haired adventurer who along with his friends Dogi and Dr. Flare have been waylaid on their journey to Salsetta in the town of Karnak on the coast of Glia. This area is under the sphere of influence of the Balta Sea Force, a group of Normans who control the northern seas. Our second main character is Karja Balta, the daughter of the Jarl of the Balta Sea Force. Adol and Karja come together by virtue of the power of mana, which allows them and them alone to defeat the relentless Grieger incursions threatening everyone in the Obelia Gulf. Without the power of mana, the Grieger cannot be stopped and cannot be killed. Adol and Karja are tied together both metaphorically as shield siblings and literally with the mana that is binding them, and they seek to repel the invasion of Grieger and discover who the mysterious Leela is who is speaking to them from the shell Adol found and gained his mana powers from. For those interested in the Ys timeline, Ys 10 takes place after the events of Ys 2 and before the events of Ys Memories of Salsetta, meaning it is one of Adol's earliest adventures and he is 19 years old during this one. Falcom specifically said they wanted to go back to younger Adol before they proceeded onto some of his older adventures since they had been doing that with Ys 9 and Ys 7 before. I suspected going in, and was proven right, that the biggest selling point for the story and writing would be the dynamic between Adol and Karja. They were great as a pair with their contrasting personalities and sibling-like dynamic, and this is still without making Adol talk too much, which is my preferred Adol state. Beyond that, I also think that while Ys 8 and Ys 9 have better characters on the top end of the character chart, Ys 10 has the most consistently well-written characters for the recent games in the series. All the characters feel fleshed out and important, and while I can point to some that annoyed me at times, it was for understandable character-driven reasons, unlike what I've seen in some previous games. The main story itself had a good plot that enabled the characters to have strong focus, but I do think that the game tried to spread itself too far on too thin a premise in certain cases. The Grieger are a strong threat, and their plan's execution in the early going is fantastic. I just wish that villainous dynamic with the cast had kept up that strong beginning. Overall, a solid story full of fun characters that unfortunately slipped some during the game. I will say though that Karja is an absolute delight as a character, and I really think that brings it together, but a tighter narrative may have bumped Ys 10's story up for me. It's a fun adventure either way. The highlight for any Ys game though is the combat, and Ys 10 delivers a fun but different experience from what players may be used to. Ys 10 introduces the cross-action system, with players controlling either one of the characters or both at the same time. In solo mode, you can use character-specific skills, dodge incoming attacks, and move around faster. In duel mode, Adol and Karja team up and you can use duo skills, block and counter attacks, and unleash a flurry of attacks on your foes so long as you don't have to move far to do so. While I was worried that this may slow down the fast-paced action combat Ys is known for, that turned out not to be the case. These are still smooth, speedy combat encounters, and the enemies like to throw you off any dominant strategy to take them out with their variety of skills and attacks in turn. There is still fine-tuning needed for the system, as the blocking powers are stronger and more useful than the dodging in solo mode, but Ys 10 has the cleanest and best feeling combat of the games introducing a new combat system into the series, in my opinion. I cannot wait to see how they adjust and grow the system in future entries. In addition to what I said before, one of the changes for the cross-action system versus the party system is how they handle the super abilities. These are combined flashy attacks that come when dodging or blocking particular attacks, which are telegraphed well in advance. While this does take away your agency that players had in the party system when you could choose when to use your ultimate skill, it does allow for some tense moments as you try to prepare and get the timing just right to turn the battle in your favor. I also like how for particular boss battles, these attacks have special animated sequences, which are among the best animations the game has to offer, and that's high praise. Speaking of boss battles, I think that they were fine. Revisiting Oath and Felghana recently made me appreciate older Ys boss battles, and I think Ys 10 Nordics has some fun ones, but they end up feeling the same a lot of the time. The few times Ys 10 does try to venture off the beaten path, though, end up in gimmicky bosses that, for the most part, missed, unfortunately. In some ways, the elite standard enemies ended up giving me a better feeling of accomplishment than the bosses, and that's not ideal for an RPG. Boss battles are definitely the area of the game that I hope gets the greatest improvement for the next Ys game. They're not bad, but I also don't feel like they were a great test of my skill in the combat system and didn't utilize the potential that the combat system has to offer. In addition to land combat, we have, for the first time ever in the series, sea combat. Once you have control of your own ship, you will have the chance to sail around, collecting drifting items, traveling to far-off places, observing the sea life, and engaging in naval combat. The naval combat improves as the game goes on. Early on, when all you have are basic cannons and no additional abilities, the combat is rather boring. Towards the end, when you have several special ammunition types, you can ram enemies and block some incoming attacks while maneuvering around the seas, it's a great time. I was worried the sea battles may feel annoying to deal with, but the regular encounters I'd say are a breath of fresh air and a new challenge that I eagerly enjoyed, especially since there weren't too many. The one exception to the combat pacing being great was in Ys 10's equivalent of the raid battles called Liberations, where you try to liberate the various islands in Obelia Gulf. First, you have a sea battle phase where you take on enemies and take down the pillars holding up a barrier around the island so you can then finish the encounter on land. These would be great if the sea encounters didn't become tedious after a while with all the enemies spawning. Once again, raid missions are a downside for an Ys game, and I just wish Falcom would scrap them at this point. The early shorter ones though are a nice challenge, and I just wish they'd done that and not lengthen them out towards the end where you have to go through 4 sea phases. That's just too many. Progression in the game is focused on an unlockable tree called the release line system. As you level up, you can go through more of the tiers unlocking new skills and slots that you can put gems into to increase certain stats. You'll find these gems while exploring around, or you can synthesize your own. While you unlock some skills through this system, most of the skills you get will be from leveling up your current skills, which helps you learn new ones, which is pretty much how it worked in the party system as well. It's not just skills that are going to help you on your journey though, as you will need quality weapons and armor, and you can buy and then upgrade weapons and armor in the forge. Your ship will also need to get stronger, and you do that by gathering the necessary materials and completing proposals to increase things like your attack power, defense, speed for the general ship, and then upgrading and learning new abilities or ammos for the cannons. There's a lot to do to keep up in the arms race with your enemies. Just make sure you're taking the time to gather resources though, and you'll be fine. Now, as you are traveling around Obelia Gulf, there is a lot of stuff to do beyond the main story. For exploration, you can find chests, crystal chunks, and buried treasure on every island. You'll use your mana abilities to find objects and travel around the map, from surfing on water to swinging between the trees. I loved the Monstrum powers in Ys 9 and how they opened up the map in new ways. Ys 10 doesn't quite capture that same feeling with the mana powers, but it's close, and I'm thankful for it because there's a lot that I want to find around and a lot that's useful when I do take a look. There are so many resources to gather too, which can be used for upgrading your weapons in the ship, and also can be used in place of coin to barter with merchants, which I love as a twist on the usual merchant game system. Then you have the rune stones, which detail some of the history of Obelia Gulf and the Normans especially. I love the parallel to the real-life Viking rune stones and how this gives background information, but also some important story lore for those interested. Exploring offers a lot for those just looking to complete the main story, and even more for those looking to find everything and complete every bit of side content we can find. Speaking of side content, there are the standard side quests which in true Falcom form are excellent with a lot of insight into the people of the land and how the events of the game affect them. There's plenty of quests, but not too many that you feel overwhelmed. In addition to getting to know the people of the land, you also want to get to know the people on the sea with you as you develop bonds with the various people in your crew. As I said before, this is one of the most fleshed out likable casts I've seen in the East series, so more time with them was fine by me. You can give them gifts, complete their particular side quests, and it feels like you properly helped them by the end of things. I love these little journeys within the major story that helps keep me attached to these characters and the land and the general area. And don't worry, major characters like Dogi and Karja have their own chances to shine in these moments too. East 10 also brings back fishing, which I guess Adol then forgot he was capable of doing again until East 8 rolls around. But hey, it's pretty much just a standard button mashing fishing game, but I still feel a sense of accomplishment catching them all. Even while completing the vast majority of the side content of the game, I was able to finish East 10 in just over 30 hours, so there's a lot to do, but it's not dragging the game out. My thoughts on the visual presentation of East 10 is pretty much the reverse of my thoughts on the visual presentation for the game I finished prior to East 10, Visions of Mana. Visions of Mana has absolutely gorgeous locations, rich in detail and color, but the characters are pretty much expressionless and the animation is stiff and wonky. East 10 has very expressive characters, and the animation is the smoothest the series has ever seen. Unfortunately, its setting is rather bland, and the color scheme doesn't do the game any favors. There are some really gorgeous moments, but those are the exceptions when otherwise you are traveling through landscapes and waters that feel pretty much the same from beginning to end. Even the populated areas lack a lot of distinguishing characteristics. The character designs are great, helping give each character a distinct look that holds up really well. It's just unfortunate the locations couldn't offer the same feeling. The voice acting is a highlight for the game, carried by the excellent performance of Jeremy Lee as Karja. The music maintains the East series quality with the requisite rocking tracks for exploration and some nice calmer location themes that utilize instrumentation to give a sea adventure feel. While the user experience is for the most part good, I will note that I wish the game had the ability to simply toggle sprinting on instead of always needing to hold down the button. Same with duo mode, and don't get me started on the fishing with its button mashing. I hope Falcom starts to think of ways to offer more alternative options that may make the game a less stressful experience on the hands. There's plenty of quality of life features for the game that help avoid tedium in traveling around and accomplishing all that you want to accomplish. The map has all the relevant information with clear use of symbols to guide you where you need to go. While I am disappointed there was not more environmental variety, I still think East 10 looks and sounds like a great adventure. The East games that introduce new gameplay systems tend not to get the recognition that I think they deserve. This is certainly true for Arkham Nepishtim and East 7, and I think East 10 could go down the same path. There will be plenty of refinement and improvement from this point, but even starting from where East 10 is at now, I think the series is in great shape. East 10 has fun combat, a strong sense of exploration with plenty to do, a solid new gameplay element with the ocean combat, and a lovable cast with excellent vocal performances behind them. East fans will enjoy the return of Adol and his adventures, and new fans can get a taste of what this classic series has to offer. If East 10 Nordics has caught your eye, I recommend giving it a try, at the very least with the demo, which will give you a great feel for what the game has to offer. That's a really generous demo. Thank you all for watching. Please leave the video a like if you enjoyed it, subscribe for more East, Falcom, and RPG content in general, and I'll see you in the next video. Have a great day, and happy gaming.